you know, you can never go forward in anything unless you have a sense of where you're coming from. And I found that out really very early in my time here, over for almost 40 years ago. So Genesis history is very rich, and it begins with the people who owned this property, who were the Crane Paper Company back in the late 1800s. And Mrs. Crane evidently had a great love of trees, and so she planted many of the trees on this property are over 100 years old because she planted them. And some of them she planted to be a barrier so that the sound of the paper mill wouldn't come through, because there weren't homes by and near us at that point. And so they gave up the house and the beautiful property, turned it over, sold it actually after Mr. Crane died, and the Sisters of Providence, we took it over in 1929. And so for a few years, it was where young sisters came to have their formative years as novices, we would speak of. So from that point on, you know, it's very holy ground because it's had a great history at so many levels. And so we had the novitiate here, if you will, for a few years while we were building our mother house in Holyoke. And then we began the ministry to unwed mothers, which we as a community had in Millbury, but the house had burned down. And so we were invited to start that ministry here in this diocese. So from 1932 until 1964, in the beautiful estate home, 26-room house that Mr. Crane had had, the ministry to unwed mothers was conducted. And so that laid the ground for Genesis, because healing took place, acceptance took place, compassion took place, understanding took place for those young women who were shunned at that time by society. And our sisters were really very, very fine, good to them, very good to them. So that's the history, that's the grounding of this place. So that when I started here in '76 and Sister Ruth came shortly after me, we already had a good foundation, because there was left behind from those ministries a wonderful energy, grace, and welcoming to people who maybe would be shunned. So we walked into something that was already for us. And we began in 1976 as Genesis Spiritual Life Center. And we welcome people from all walks of life, all faiths, no faith, all orientations, different beliefs. And we were designing our programs then so that they were an extension of our ministry of hope and healing, which is our community Sisters of Providence charism. And at that time, we expanded our ministry so that it would reach the whole person, body, spirit, mind. And at the same time, a few years later, realized that we could not do that without being deeply connected to earth. And so the earth and our land was of special concern for us, as it is to this day. Our mission statement stated that we believe that each person is a seed of God. And we hope and we support in the programs that we do, in our atmosphere, in our surroundings, that that seed can grow into the likeness of God. So people realize that through their welcome, through our hospitality. Every place is known for hospitality, for welcoming. But I think Genesis has always had something extra special to offer. Genesis means beginnings, new beginnings. So people come away for a new start, whether it's just for a weekend to let something new bubble up in them, or whether for it's a longer time, to let themselves be restored, regenerated, renewed. And it's also, there's always a Genesis constantly taking place. Genesis isn't just an old story in the Bible. It's alive right here at this moment as we're doing this. And so we have been faithful to that mission. We have been faithful to our own desire to see our place grow and expand. And mostly, I think, to be ahead of the times. So we've always had a vision to go where no one else would go. Our foundress, Mother Mary of Providence, was a remarkable woman. We're here over 140 years now in this area. And so she instilled in us, just by her courage, her tenacity, her professionalism, that you can accomplish almost anything if you walk with Providence. And she always said it, as actually St. Vincent de Paul was the one who said it, Providence unfolds one step at a time, but be very careful not to run ahead of Providence. But today, we realize the importance of moving forward and being on the edge to draw people into the more of themselves. People don't understand the potential that they have to do good, to grow, to touch other lives. And so a lot of that happens here at Genesis. And it goes back to our very founding days here, really, when our novices were here. And they were encouraged to grow into the fullness of who they were meant to be. So that thread has found its way. The care for the land is very important to me. We've been very careful ecologically. We've tried to be. You're not up to par on that. You can always do much, much better. But people have seen us because we were probably on the forefront of teaching eco-spirituality, that the spirituality of the earth is really an important element of our own understanding of where we come from and who we are. And so it's been a great joy to have been able to be here. I owe my community a great deal. Sisters of Providence have supported us year after year after year. And now, as many, many communities and many spiritual and many ministries are doing, is we are giving over, or not giving over, but collaborating with laity. And so we have someone like Suzanne Boniface, who's in our marketing department, and Liz Waltz, who's our new executive director, and Pat Fettinger, who's our layperson. But not to ever think for 1 minute that this place could run if we didn't have the real down-to-earth services that we have, that are conducted by wonderful men and women who work in dietary, who work in housekeeping. Hospitality starts at the front door, and Tricia, it starts at the telephone usually for us, or emails. But Tricia is she's like the face of Genesis. And then each one of the people who work here, just let it pour out of them by the way they are, the way they respect people, the way they honor people. And they see God in them. And what more could one ask for? Amen.